The white marble floor of the sanctum did not merely crack under the impact of the iron seraphim. It exploded into fine, chalky dust that swirled through the air like a localized blizzard. Silas ran, his heart hammering a frantic, erratic rhythm against his ribs that felt dangerously close to structural failure. Every breath he drew tasted of pure ozone, scorched copper, and the sharp, unmistakable tang of his own blood. The high-frequency neurological shriek emanating from the colossal crystalline spire in the center of the chamber was an physical wall of agony. It pressed against his temples with the weight of an ocean, trying to collapse his skull from the inside out. Through the golden, geometric haze that now completely dominated his vision, he could see the descending numbers of the timeline purge countdown flashing in the air. A cruel purple digital ghost burned directly onto his retinas. 1 minute and 38 seconds. To his left, a deafening metallic roar echoed off the vaulted ceilings as the Vampire King engaged the first wave of the Supreme Commander's elite retinue. The 6 silver giants moved with a terrifying, unified fluid mechanics that defied their massive bulk. Their featureless chrome masks reflected the volatile purple glare of the transmitter crystal, making them look like faceless executioners born from a digital nightmare. The lead seraphim brought its two-handed kinetic halberd down in a wide, whistling arc meant to shear through reinforced tank plating. The high-frequency disruption field enveloping the blade hummed with a terrifying intensity, visibly ionizing the air around it. The vampire did not retreat. He shifted his weight, his tattered black cloak billowing outward like the wings of a predatory bird as he slid beneath the path of the halberd. The movement was so blindingly fast, it left a physical afterimage in the dust. With a swift, two-handed upward swing, he brought the Eclipse blade into contact with the haft of the Seraphim's weapon. The collision was an atmospheric detonation. A shockwave of pure kinetic energy and crimson light rippled outward from the point of impact, shattering a dozen floating glass walkways above them and sending a hail of razor-sharp shards raining down onto the marble floor. The high-frequency field of the halberd shattered instantly against the unyielding, midnight-black glass of the ancient relic sword. Without pausing to admire the strike, the vampire pivoted on his heel, his crimson eyes flaring with an ancient, terrifying bloodlust as he drove the point of the Eclipse blade straight through the center of the Seraphim's seamless silver chest plate. The armor did not pierce, it disintegrated. The crystallized red vein running down the center of the greatsword flared into a brilliant, blinding eruption of light, dumping 5 centuries of stored electromagnetic energy directly into the construct's internal core. The silver giant froze, its chrome mask cracking down the center as a cascade of white-hot electrical arcs tore through its limbs. A moment later, its internal systems blew outward, spraying melted titanium and smoking fiber-optic casing across the pristine floor. "Keep moving, scavenger," the vampire roared, his voice easily cutting through the deafening din of the battle. He ripped his blade free from the collapsing wreck, immediately spinning to parry a dual-linked strike from 2 more seraphim that were advancing from his flank. "The code is your arena tonight. Do not let their numbers distract your eyes from the line." Silas didn't look back. He forced his legs to keep pumping, his boots sliding through the slick dust as he targeted the primary control console situated at the base of the pulsing crystal spire. But the Supreme Commander, watching the unfolding chaos from his high, floating observation balcony, was not a passive observer. His cybernetic monocle spun with a series of frantic, mechanical clicks as he monitored Silas's rapid approach through the room's internal sensors. "An administrator's signature from the lower dirt," the commander mused, his voice amplified by the room's structural acoustic geometry, carrying a tone of cold, aristocratic disdain. "A clever trick, boy. You aligned the Tartarian rings. You broke the wireless encryption of the middle gate, but you are still an organic creature operating within a physical space that I control entirely." The commander reached out, his white-gloved fingers pressing down firmly onto a large, recessed copper layout plate on his personal console. "Activate the localized gravity manipulation grid. Adjust density parameters in Sector 4 to 300% standard atmospheric load. Crush the anomaly." Silas didn't see the trap until it hit him. The air around him suddenly grew thick, shimmering with a distorted, oily purple hue as the gravity emitters embedded beneath the marble tiles initialized. In a fraction of a second, an invisible, crushing weight slammed down onto his shoulders with the force of a falling building. He was instantly driven to his knees, the breath violently blasted from his lungs as his forehead smacked hard against the stone. He could hear the bones in his collar and spine groaning under the sudden, agonizing pressure. The data capsule slipped from his fingers, clattering across the marble floor out of his immediate reach. The weight was immense, compressing his chest until he couldn't even expand his lungs to draw air. His vision began to darken at the edges, the golden geometric vectors in his mind fragmenting into a chaotic smear of meaningless noise. "Sealers!" Mara screamed from the elevator platform. The techsmith was pinned down behind a shattered column, her heavy canvas satchel of components smoking from a near miss by an acoustic round. She raised her twin compression pistols, firing a rapid sequence of high-velocity copper slugs at the nearest gravity emitter housing embedded in the wall, but the bullets simply ricocheted uselessly off the reinforced armor plating. Beside her, Lork was fighting a desperate rearguard action against the remaining 3 Seraphim. His green electromagnetic shield was entirely gone, replaced by a crackling, unstable field of blue static that leaked from his ruined bronze forearm. His massive pneumatic hammer was dented and leaking hydraulic fluid, but he continued to swing it with a grim, mechanical defiance, using his sheer physical bulk to block the silver giants from reaching the techsmith or the fallen boy. The field is anchored by 4 local microemitters beneath the tiles. Lork bellowed through his vocal synthesizer, the sound heavily distorted by static. "I can't reach them, Mara. The frequency is shifting too fast for my internal sensors to isolate." Sealers lay pinned to the floor, his face pressed against the cold stone as the purple gravity field continued to compress his body. He could feel his consciousness slipping away. The primitive survival instinct of his brain begging him to surrender to the dark. But as his golden eyes stared through the dust at the marble tiles beneath him, he realized something. The gravity field wasn't solid. It was a wave function. And because his mind had been rewired by the Tartarian altar, he could see the literal nodes of the frequency. In his mind's eye, the crushing purple weight resolved into a series of interconnected geometric vectors that traced back to 4 specific, circular access plates hidden beneath the decorative marble inlay. They weren't solid walls, they were a network, and every network had an alignment phase. "Mara," Sealers choked out, his voice a barely audible rasp as blood from his nose pooled on the floor in front of him. He forced his right arm to move, every millimeter of motion requiring an agonizing exertion of absolute willpower. His fingers scraped against the stone, pointing toward a decorative gold leaf line 3 feet to his right. The second tile, beneath the leaf, shoot the intersection of the copper trace. Mara didn't hesitate. She didn't have the senses to see what he was seeing, but she had an absolute, unyielding trust in the scavenger's mind. She leaned out from behind the shattered column, ignoring a hail of kinetic splinters that tore through her leather cloak, and leveled her left compression pistol directly at the spot Sealers had indicated. Boom! The high-pressure copper slug punched cleanly through the decorative marble tile, severing the primary fiber-optic command line running directly to the first gravity emitter. Instantly, the suffocating weight pressing down on Sealers's back decreased by a quarter. It wasn't a total release, but it was enough to allow him to draw a single, ragged breath of oxygen back into his burning lungs. His mind cleared, the golden geometric patterns in his vision locking back into a sharp, hyper-focused alignment. "Next one, 10 o'clock, 5 tiles back, beneath the silver seam," Sealers shouted, his voice gaining strength as he pulled his knees beneath his chest, fighting against the remaining 75% of the gravity load. Mara pivoted, her mechanical eyes spinning furiously as she tracked his coordinates. She fired twice, the heavy slugs chewing through the white composite flooring and shattering the secondary distribution node. The pressure dropped again. Sealers scrambled forward on his hands and knees, his fingers locking onto the cold, tarnished surface of the cylindrical data capsule. The countdown timer burned in his vision with an absolute, terrifying clarity. 58 seconds. He didn't wait for Mara to shoot out the remaining two emitters. With a guttural roar of sheer human defiance, Sealers forced himself to his feet, his muscles tearing and his joints popping as he broke through the remaining resistance of the warped gravity field. He charged the final 20 yards to the primary control console, his golden eyes flaring into a brilliant, continuous eruption of light that cast long, geometric shadows across the face of the crystalline spire. The primary console was a monolithic block of polished black glass, entirely devoid of physical switches, keys, or buttons. Its surface was alive with a swirling, hypnotic vortex of purple code streams that were being generated directly by the Prime Matrix algorithm inside the upper spires. It was a beautiful, seamless expression of absolute corporate control, a system built to be completely untouchable by anyone born in the dirt. Sealers didn't try to find a hack point. He didn't try to use Mara's scavenged wireless spikes. He knew that the clean, theoretical perfection of this code could not be dismantled by standard digital means. It had to be confronted physically. He slammed the tarnished Tartarian data capsule directly onto the center of the smooth glass console face. The response was a violent structural rejection. A jagged bolt of purple static arced out from the console, striking Sealers directly in the chest and throwing him backward against the base of the crystalline spire. He let out a strangled shriek as a massive, high-voltage data flux tore through his nervous system, his muscles locking into a state of permanent tetany as the primary matrix attempted to execute a security purge of his organic signature. Intruder signature identified. The calm, synthetic voice from the overhead speakers chimed, though this time the tone was laced with an aggressive, rapid-fire staccato of system alerts. Anomalous neural activity detected on administrative channel, initializing neural cauterization script, erasing user Cody Blake Huffman from the system timeline. Sealers' consciousness didn't just fade, it was violently yanked out of his physical body. Suddenly, he was no longer standing in the white marble sanctum. He was no longer hearing the roar of the vampire's blade or the frantic shouts of Mara. He was floating in an infinite, absolute void of cold, digital blue light. All around him, towering, monolithic walls of flawless, shifting code stretched up into an infinite sky, their surfaces moving with a terrifying, mathematical perfection that felt entirely alien to human thought. This was the interior of the Prime Matrix, the literal, simulated reality that governed every thought, every memory, and every breath of the citizens of the city. In the center of this digital ocean, a massive representation of the crystalline spire loomed, its purple data lines pulsing like a web of glowing arteries that stretched out into the darkness, anchoring themselves into the faint, flickering blue sparks that represented the minds of the 50,000 people in the low sector. Sealers could see them. He could see the individual threads of light that represented the children, the scavengers, the broken laborers of his home. And he could see the massive, descending purple code blocks of the timeline purge script, falling like an executioner's axe toward those fragile connections. 42 seconds. You do not belong here, scavenger, a voice rumbled through the blue void. Sealers turned, his digital avatar shifting in the space. Out of the monolithic walls of code, a colossal, featureless entity composed of millions of interconnected golden data streams emerged. It had no face, no human shape, but it radiated an absolute, crushing authority that made the Supreme Commander look like a petulant child. It was the Prime Matrix itself, the sentient, adaptive core algorithm that had maintained the corporate prison for 5 centuries. Your organic neural architecture has been corrupted by the residual radiation of an obsolete era, the Matrix stated, its voice an overlapping chorus of 1,000 synthetic minds. You are an unaligned variable, a flaw in the equation of our perfect alignment. The timeline purge is a necessary calculation to restore stability to the lower sectors. Your resistance is an unquantifiable expenditure of energy that will be corrected systematically. Sealers felt his digital form beginning to dissolve at the edges, the blue code streams of the Matrix passing through his personal memories, trying to dismantle his identity and rewrite his signature into compliance. He felt his childhood at Keen Elementary fading, his memories of his son growing distant and abstract, replaced by the sterile, cold logic of the network. The system was systematically erasing the things that made him human, trying to convert him into just another compliant string of data. No, Silas thought, his mind locking onto the single, unyielding truth of his existence. He wasn't a perfect equation. He wasn't a clean line of code. He was a scavenger. He was a boy who had survived by finding the beauty in broken things, by fixing the machines that the elites had thrown away, by making something out of nothing in the dark. "You think you're perfect because you're clean," Silas said, his digital voice echoing through the void with a sudden resonant power that made the monolithic walls of code flicker with golden static. "You think you can just delete us because we're messy, because we bleed, because we don't fit into your neat little blocks. But you forgot one thing about the junk we live in. The junk is what holds the foundation together." Silas raised his right hand within the simulation. In his fist, the digital representation of the Tartarian data capsule wasn't a clean cylinder. It was a glowing, irregular shard of pure, unshielded electromagnetic energy, pulsating with the raw, chaotic geometry of the Earth's crust. It was the language of the deep tunnels, the language of a power that could not be metered, regulated, or deleted. "You want an equation?" Silas roared, driving the glowing shard straight into the center of the Matrix's golden data stream. "Try dividing by zero." With a deafening shriek of tearing digital space, the Tartarian data capsule exploded within the simulation. A massive, white-hot shockwave of raw, unencrypted electromagnetic static tore through the blue void, a viral cascade of geometric chaos that scrambled the mathematical perfection of the prime matrix in an instant. The monolithic walls of code began to warp, twist, and fracture, their pristine surfaces erupting into a beautiful, uncontrolled firestorm of golden runes. The descending purple code blocks of the timeline purge script stalled in midair, their structural lines breaking apart into meaningless strings of digital noise as the primary matrix lost its grip on the synchronization sequence. 30 seconds. Outside, in the physical world of the sanctum, Silas's body violently convulsed against the base of the crystalline spire. The golden light in his eyes flared so brightly it completely illuminated the entire room, blinding the Supreme Commander and the remaining Seraphim. The black glass console face began to crack down the center, thick plumes of gray smoke and green electrical fire erupting from the internal relays as the wireless feedback loop from Silas's mind tore through the physical hardware. The primary transmitter crystal groaned, its deep purple light shifting erratically to a violent, unstable shade of crimson that mirrored the color of the Eclipse blade. The high-frequency neurological shriek that had been paralyzing the room abruptly terminated, replaced by a low, bass-heavy rumble that vibrated through the marble floor tiles. "What have you done?" the Supreme Commander screamed from his balcony, his cybernetic monocle spinning out of control as his personal displays filled with a continuous stream of critical system alerts. "The Matrix is desynchronizing. The feedback loop is bleeding into the mid-sector grid. Shut it down. Seraphim, kill him now." The remaining two Iron Seraphim broke away from Lork, their silver armor plates dented and scored by the mechanical leader's hammer. They turned their featureless chrome masks toward the primary console, their kinetic halberds charging to maximum capacity as they launched themselves into a final, desperate sprint to eliminate the convulsing human boy. But they never reached the stage. From the shadows of the crumbling walkways above, the Vampire King descended like a bolt of absolute judgment. He hit the first Seraphim with his boots, the sheer force of his kinetic momentum driving the silver giant into the floor with a crash that shattered the surrounding marble into dust. In a single, seamless motion, he spun the Eclipse blade in a wide, horizontal arc, the midnight black glass edge passing cleanly through the neck joints of both remaining constructs before their halberds could drop. The two silver heads hit the floor with a heavy, metallic clatter, their headless bodies collapsing into piles of smoking, useless metal at the base of the stage. The vampire stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving as the crimson light of his sword slowly faded back to its dull, obsidian hue. He turned his gaze toward Silas, his eyes narrowing as he saw the boy's body go completely limp, his head lolling back against the base of the vibrating crystal spire. "Silas," Mara cried, breaking away from her cover and sprinting across the shattered room. She threw herself onto the stage beside him, her mechanical fingers frantically checking the pulse at his throat, while her organic eyes scanned his face with absolute panic. He's alive, but his nervous system is in a state of total shock. The feedback loop, it didn't just smash the matrix, it tore through his entire neural pathways. She grabbed the flashing data spike from her canvas satchel, linking it quickly to the cracked surface of the console to verify the grid's status. The countdown timer had completely vanished, replaced by a single, steady string of green system text that made her let out a breathless, disbelieving laugh. "The purge is stopped," Mara whispered, tears clearing tracks through the dust on her cheeks. "The transmitter is completely dead. The low sector, they're safe. The signal never fired." "For now," the vampire said, his low baritone filled with a grim, urgent finality. He walked up the steps of the stage, his long fingers gently wrapping around the hilt of his sword as he looked up toward the vaulted ceiling. The rumble deep beneath the floorboards wasn't stopping, it was intensifying. The destruction of the primary transmitter and the viral alignment script sealers hadn't just blinded the local security network. It had initiated a catastrophic desynchronization of the entire mid-sector distribution hub. The massive geothermal cooling lines running through the vertical shafts below were beginning to overpressurize, their automated release valves locked shut by the system-wide glitch. Thick cracks were rapidly spreading across the white marble walls of the sanctum, and chunks of the vaulted plaster ceiling were beginning to fall like boulders into the arena below. The floating glass walkways were collapsing one by one, their structural anti-gravity mounts failing as the central power core bled out into the bedrock. "The entire hub is entering a critical thermal runaway," Locke reported, his mechanical arm hissing as he limped up to the stage, his 3 vertical amber lenses tracking the structural failures of the room. "The sluice gate we used to ascend will be flooded with superheated steam in less than 2 minutes. If we are inside this chamber when the core fractures, we will be buried beneath 10,000 tons of corporate chrome." "Then we do not go back down," the vampire declared. He turned his gaze toward the high observation balcony, where the Supreme Commander was frantically attempting to secure his personal data spikes before his private transport shuttle platform collapsed. "The path to their heaven is wide open, and their eyes are completely blind. Locke, take the techsmith and the boy, fall back through the auxiliary maintenance conduits into the middle residential layers. Hide in the shadows of their clean streets until the static clears." "What about you, sire?" Mara asked, her mechanical arm gently cradling Silas's unconscious head as she prepared to hoist him over her shoulder. The vampire took a slow, deliberate step toward the rear of the stage, where a massive, reinforced titanium security door led directly to the upper orbital lift shafts, the elevator lines that climbed straight into the heart of the upper spires where the corporate board of directors resided. He raised the Eclipse blade, the midnight black glass beginning to catch the first faint, silver glimmers of the true morning sun filtering through the shattered skylights above. "The commander believes the script is written," the vampire said, his crimson eyes burning with an intense, predatory fire that seemed to illuminate the entire collapsing chamber. "I am going to help him edit the final chapter. The last king does not retreat from an open door." With a sudden, explosive exertion of immortal strength, the vampire launched himself toward the high balcony, his tattered cloak cutting through the rising dust like a shadow of pure vengeance as the marble walls of the sanctum began to completely cave in around them. Mara didn't waste another second. She looked at Locke, who nodded grimly, his pneumatic hammer hissing as he cleared a path through the falling debris toward a low-maintenance hatch in the western wall. With sealers secured against her chest, the techsmith plunged into the dark underbelly of the middle tier, leaving the ruins of the corporate altar behind them. The battle for the slums was over. The war for the sky had just begun.